Sonic. Again, I know, another video about Sonic. Well, that's where you're wrong, idiot. This isn't a video about Sonic. This is a video about games that play like Sonic. So it's technically different. For real though, this video is mainly about a specific flaw that I've noticed in a lot of Sonic fan games or games inspired by Sonic. When you think of these two categories, you probably think of the 2D games, since there's more of those. These games typically consist of super bright visuals, quirky little animal characters, and more importantly, really fast gameplay. It's really easy nowadays for everyone to take a crack at making a Sonic fan game. This typically leads into the creation of new original games based on the skills they learn from making those games. We've seen it time and time again. Hell, sometimes it could even lead to the creation of new official Sonic games. But what about the 3D ones? Well, there's no shortcoming of 3D fan games or 3D games inspired by Sonic. They're just a bit more difficult to create. A lot of them always try to aim for the same thing, and that typically can be their biggest downfall. What do I mean by that? Well, over the years, I've seen a plethora of the 3D category. The newest game in that category is Rollin' Rascal. Now, Raging Richard has been on my radar for quite some time now. I had a lot of fun with the demo, and I greatly appreciate the multiplayer aspect of it. But this video isn't about Relinquish Ronald specifically. I'll save that for another time. I'm mainly just using it as the main example for this video. The biggest aspect of this game and other Sonic fan games is the huge open world level design. I suppose you could call it open zone, since that's what Frontiers called it, which I also made a video on that you should check out. It's very inspired by the Sonic Adventure games, and in the fan games it's kind of the same thing, but also mixed with the Boost games. So with this control scheme, the intent is to have the player run around these big open worlds with all these different pathways and high-speed typical Sonic staples, like grind rails, homing attack chains, and whatnot. You get the idea. It is really fun to see how fast you can go in these big open landscapes. Those big open landscapes can be these games' biggest downfall, in my eyes. What do I mean by that? Speed needs automation. Remember the times in Sonic Adventure 1, 2, Heroes, hell, even Sonic CD had this, where you were going through a loop and the camera would pan out and show you this cool epic shot of the loop-de-loop, and it looked really cool and cinematic. Well, I'm sorry to the one person who didn't know this, but you're not controlling Sonic.
What's the point?
These parts are all automated. What that means is whenever you go through these scripted events, the game takes away full or partial control from the player. That way the game can follow the script and pull the camera out and wow the player with these grand spectacles. Every game ever has scripted events. You can consider them like mini cutscenes, basically. Some games have partial automation, where they heavily restrict your movement to guide you along a linear path. This is to give the player a bit more sense of control, but make sure they don't break the game at the same time. Well, if the game's not already broken. What happens when you don't have automation? Well, that means the player is completely responsible for controlling any sort of rapid change in level design or tech. Let's take Sonic Unleashed for example. In this game, you're running at incredibly high speeds, so when you're moving at that fast of a pace, you can't be expected to maneuver Sonic through every single bit of geometry perfectly. There are moments where the game will take over ever so slightly to not only give the player a little break, but also help keep the players interested by showing off more dynamic camera angles. When you don't have automation, things get a bit wonky. See, without the guardrails of automation, you will either get flung off or awkwardly start spazzing out trying to figure out where to go. If the player is given full control during these large moments, it can ruin it for newcomers. See, as an experienced 3D Sonic fan, I can understand how to control some jank. We, the fans, are a bit more forgiving because we kind of have a better understanding of how these games are supposed to control. For people who have very little to no experience playing through janky Sonic games, it's going to feel like things just aren't working. And to a certain extent, that could be true. I was playing the multiplayer of Roundhouse Redstone with some people in my channel's official Discord server, and it was very interesting hearing how much they were struggling to play it. I was blasting through most of the stages because, again, I feel like I have a better grasp on how to control these types of games. And since they didn't, it quickly got more and more frustrating for them. Just to clarify, I'm not saying that Reliant Randy is a bad game or anything like that. Again, Relish Roman is going to get his own video later down the road. But for this example, really painted a picture for me about how much I've gotten used to it. So after that, I hopped into the single player and quickly noticed how the open zone-esque nature of these games and a lot of Sonic fan games always have the same problem. There's not much guidance. When you go back to the games that these games were inspired by, you can probably note how linear they are. There's some very mild exploration involved, but it's all pretty self-contained. You know where to go because it's super obvious. Even if you venture off to get a power-up or extra goodie, you know where to go after that. With how big these levels can be, sometimes it's a bit confusing as to where to go to get back on track if you venture off. Sometimes you don't even have to venture off. There were a good number of times where I was just flat out confused on where to go next or how to progress. Other games of this nature also have a problem involving skipping just vast chunks of the level. 3D Sonic games usually have level elements that are super vertical to keep the player moving forward. Either that or they'll have big death pits. With these games, it's all pretty open. Since you gain so much uncapped speed, you can shoot off into the stratosphere and skip so much of the level. Sonic games usually have what's known as a speed cap, so you don't do that. Because a lot of the time, you'll either get somewhere you're not supposed to be, implying to the player that the game is unfinished or buggy, or they'll blast through all of the specifically placed level design elements that were meant to challenge the player. It can be really fun to shoot off into the sky with the sheer speed that you gain. But if every level is you finding new ways to do that, it can get pretty stale pretty quickly. Imagine like watching a movie from the behind the scenes videos. It's kind of like that. So obviously, the biggest thing that this game and other games can do to improve the experience in my eyes is automate a bit more. It's okay to hold our hands to show us something cool. Lock in our seatbelts and take us on this roller coaster ride. We're here to have fun. So show us a good time. Make us remember these fun bits. And to all the game devs, please someone make a Boost Sonic inspired game just for me. That'd be so fire. Let me voice it. Someone voice it. That'd be super cool. It's fine. But I'm curious as to what you think. Did the games I show off today slap? Do you think the jank adds to the charm? Do I look good in a dress?
I don't have a dress.
And ultimately, what do you think are some big problems with 3 Sonic-inspired games? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're looking for other videos to fill your time, I would highly recommend checking out the video I did about an amazing mod for Sonic Forces that ultimately fixes so much of what's wrong with the game. I'd really appreciate if you check that out. Anyways, I'm feeling rather rascally, so I'm gonna go on a run myself. So, I'll see you guys in the next video.